I publicly confessed my love to the most popular girl at school, but I did it in Spanish. She asked me what it meant, but I didn't tell her. The next day I transferred to another school. It was exhilarating to leave after making such a bold move. Unexpectedly, we met again at my Spanish professor's house, and it turned out she was his daughter. I had been secretly admiring Isabella for 2 years. She had transferred to our class just before I was about to leave. On the day I was leaving, I took advantage of the noise from the tennis court and, feeling daring, I shouted, "Isabella, te amo!" It's Spanish for I love you. Isabella, who had just scored a point, froze for a moment, then glanced at me with a mix of curiosity. I quickly hid the phone I had been using to take pictures, pretended to stay calm, and gave her a thumbs up. Isabella stared at me for a few seconds before suddenly breaking into a smile. That smile felt like it could see right through me, making me feel guilty. A little while later, during a break, Isabella put down her racket and sat down beside me. She turned to me with a smile and asked, "What did you just say?" Nervously, I pretended to swallow some imaginary water and lied. I said, "Go for it." She raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms, and looked at me suspiciously. "I didn't hear that," she said. My heart raced, and I tried to explain. "It's the same thing, just said in Spanish." There was a brief silence. I glanced at her, and she seemed to be thinking. A mischievous glint flashed in her eyes, and she smiled slightly. "Sounds nice," she said. The compliment took me by surprise. "Oh, really?" I responded, still a little confused. She smiled wider, her tone slowing. "Yes, that Spanish phrase sounds nice." I felt awkward thinking about the meaning of the phrase, and after a long pause, I couldn't say anything. Isabella, however, seemed genuinely pleased, her smile lighting up her face. Then she pointed to the court, raising an eyebrow. "Julian, whenever I score a point, can you cheer for me with that Spanish phrase?" "Excuse me?" I said, eyes wide, feeling like my brain had short-circuited. Every time she scored a point, I would have to shout, "I love you?" That didn't seem like something I could do. I still wanted to keep some dignity. She smiled smugly and, seeing my silence, decided for me. That settled then. Then, she ran back to the court. I stood there, dumbfounded. I couldn't believe this was happening in front of the whole class. At that moment, I didn't care about the class anymore. I just hoped she wouldn't score too many points. After all, I was a shy person, only daring to admire her from a distance, never openly. But just as I feared, she scored again shortly after returning to the court, and waving at me proudly, gestured for me to shout that special phrase. There was no escaping it. Nervously, I mouthed the words. She seemed dissatisfied and came over during the break. With a knowing smile, she said, "Julian, you haven't cheered for me yet." I was stuck, looking around for a way out. Finally, I tried to bluff, "Isabella tu alma," thinking it meant something close. "Your soul." Isabella shook her head confidently. "Not that one. The other one." I was speechless. She didn't fully understand but could tell I wasn't saying the right thing. So I gave in and reluctantly said, "Isabella, te amo." Finally, she left, looking smug, leaving me standing there awkwardly. It seemed like Isabella had gained some newfound energy, scoring points left and right. Meanwhile, I kept shouting, "Isabella, te amo," with increasing numbness. When the match ended, I grabbed my backpack and bolted. But as soon as I reached the school gate, Isabella caught up to me. She said I'd worked hard to cheer for her and insisted on treating me to milk tea, taking me to the shop. Thinking she was only trying to be nice, I quickly pulled out my phone and paid for the drinks. "It's not right for a girl to pay," I said, inserting the straw for her. She smiled and thanked me. Then, looking up at me, she asked, "Julian, we're friends now, right?" I froze for a moment, then raised my milk teacup and clinked it against hers. "Of course," I replied. She paused, smiled, and asked, "How do you say male friend and female friend in Spanish?" I took a sip of my milk tea and, without thinking, replied, "Female friend is feminine, novia, and male friend is masculine, novio." She seemed to understand and then asked with a serious expression, "So, if you're my male friend, it's sos mi novio, and if I'm your female friend, it's soy tu novia, right?" I choked on a pearl, coughing uncontrollably. The words she was using weren't appropriate for us. We weren't boyfriend and girlfriend, just friends, amigos and amigas. How did she even know how to conjugate the verb? Could she be a language genius? I was about to correct her, but then an impish thought crossed my mind. Since she didn't fully understand, maybe I could get away with this. So I nodded, ignoring the warning bells going off in my head. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Isabella's eyebrows curve with a smile that made me feel like something big had just happened. I smiled back awkwardly, scratching my head. The early autumn wind blew past, carrying the sweet fragrance of osmanthus. At the bus stop, the long shadows of our school uniforms stretched out in the fading light. I looked at our shadows, sometimes intertwining with Isabella's hair, and felt my heart race. I remembered the notebook in my backpack and handed it to her. I just took random notes, but if you need them, take it. She glanced at the notebook and saw it was full of solutions to the problems she hadn't been able to solve. Her eyes widened in surprise. "How did you know I needed this?" I replied nervously. "Well, as long as it's useful." She hugged the notebook to her chest, holding it like a treasure. "It's very useful. I love you for this." Her habitual phrase, "I love you," slipped out, and both of us froze, our faces turning red. That was a slip of the tongue," she stammered. "Oh," I pretended to respond indifferently, showing no emotion. But in my profile, I couldn't hide the affection I felt. As the clouds turned orange-red, my bus arrived. Isabella waved me off, watching as I climbed aboard. I sat by the window and waved back at her. "See you on Monday, novio," she called. "See you on Monday, girlfriend," I whispered under my breath, suppressing the rapid beat of my heart, unsure of where to look. Thinking she wouldn't understand, I tried to remain calm and nodded. "Oh, okay." Isabella seemed overjoyed, her smile never fading. And to be honest, neither was mine. The bus started moving, and I couldn't hold back my joy any longer. I grinned widely, knowing she couldn't see me. But it wasn't until I realized we wouldn't be meeting again on Monday that I noticed how far the bus had already gone. When I got home, I rushed to charge my phone, thinking about how I needed to add Isabella on WeChat and properly say goodbye to her. However, before I could even turn the phone on, my mom took it from my hands. "Leave it to charge at home. Your aunt is here to see us off. Let's go eat first," she said. Reluctantly, I followed my mom to the restaurant. My parents had always worked abroad, so I grew up with my grandparents. My mom had just transferred her job back to take care of me, and everyone was happy for me. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't stop thinking about Isabella, eating the meal as if years had passed. Eventually, the meal ended, and I wanted to grab my phone back, but my mom stopped me. "We have a flight at 10 a.m. tomorrow. We need to get up at 5. Go wash up and sleep." Unable to reach Isabella, I was anxious and tried to convince my mom to let me get my phone, but it was no use. I had to grudgingly accept the situation. The next day, when we arrived in our new city, I finally got my phone back, only to find that my WeChat account had been deactivated by my grandmother. My old phone number was registered under her ID, and since I was moving away, she canceled it. Because she had been scammed before, she asked my aunt to log into WeChat and deactivate my account. Even my QQ account, which was linked to that number, was gone because I couldn't remember the password without the SMS verification. Everything was gone. I collapsed onto the bed in despair. "Mom, why didn't you tell me before canceling my number?" I asked. My mom looked at me innocently. "I wasn't involved, but your grandmother said she asked your teacher and confirmed there was nothing important on your WeChat. So she canceled it. She also said she had already said goodbye for you in your moments and told you to focus on your studies." I was speechless and nearly in tears. I really had to thank my grandmother. When I complained about losing contact with Isabella, my mom warned me to prioritize my studies and strictly controlled my phone usage. Thinking about how my almost reciprocated crush was crushed before it could bloom, my heart ached. But knowing my mom's strict stance, especially toward early relationships, I knew there was no point in resisting. I had to accept it. Later, I was caught up in adapting to the new school, getting used to the new teaching methods, and making friends with new classmates. The matter of contacting Isabella was temporarily forgotten, as I couldn't bring myself to deal with it. When I finally calmed down, I realized that even if our love had been mutual, the timing wasn't right. Not only were we miles apart, but we were also in the critical final year of high school. There were many factors suggesting that a temporary separation might be for the best. I felt regret for not being able to say a proper goodbye, but for now, that was all I could do. I had to wait until after the college entrance exams to contact her, if that was even possible. Lost in my thoughts, I sighed and muttered to myself, "Let's leave it to fate." A few days of feeling down passed, and I shifted my focus to studying. During the spring festival, I went abroad with my mom to reunite with my dad, so I didn't return to my hometown. I completely lost contact with Isabella and my old friends. Half a year later, I got into my dream university, and finally, I had the freedom to use my phone. I asked my grandmother for help and managed to reconnect with my old friends. After catching up and venting about my longings, one of my friends brought up Isabella. "What happened with you two? She went crazy trying to find you. She kept pestering me for your contact information. When I showed her your deactivated WeChat, she reluctantly believed it and called you a liar. I felt guilty and truly sorry. After all, in this age of the internet, losing contact without even saying goodbye was unforgivable. But I couldn't help but wonder, our friendship had been brief, just over a cup of milk tea. Did she really need to look for me so desperately? Did she say why she was looking for me?" I asked. She asked about your university choices, seemed upset for a while, and I almost thought you two had dated. Then she started dating a guy from another school named Luis Garcia. She really liked him, and apparently even had custom bracelets with his name on them. I froze. The words I wanted to ask about her contact information stuck in my throat. The disappointment in my heart was unmistakable. I replied faintly, "Oh, by the way, Isabella said if she ever gets your contacts, she'll tell you first." "Don't tell her. We're not that close," I said. But I didn't mean it in a cruel way. She had probably said that when she didn't have a boyfriend. But now that she had one, reconnecting felt meaningless to me. After all, my feelings for her hadn't been pure. And I didn't want to intrude on her happiness under the pretense of friendship and make things unnecessarily complicated. Since I missed my chance, I figured it was better to let it go. Completely cutting off contact was the wisest choice, though my heart ached, and I envied that guy named Luis Garcia. Ultimately, I was just Alexander. My friend continued talking about his new girlfriend and asked if I had one. Absent-mindedly, I replied, "Yeah, a few." Ignoring my friend's enthusiastic scream, I found an excuse to hang up. Disappointed by how my long-held hopes had fallen apart, I sat on the dorm balcony, lost in thought. I opened my phone and ordered a few bottles of beer to mourn my lost years of secret love. Half drunk, my roommate Julian came back, looking love-struck. He hooked his arm around my shoulder, shaking me. "Alexander, Alexander, I saw the Spanish professor's daughter today. She's really beautiful. Her figure, her looks. She should still be in the professor's office. Let me take you to see her." He couldn't stop praising her. I scoffed and shrugged off his hand. No one could be more beautiful than Isabella. I had never seen a girl prettier than her. Seeing I was unmoved, he noticed the beer bottles next to me. "What's wrong?" "Heartbroken." "With whom? When? You've been hiding it well." He fired off questions in quick succession. "It was a crush," I said, telling him the story of my almost successful love. He sighed in regret. "Just missed it by a bit. If only you hadn't transferred. Well, it's in the past. Crushes always come with regrets." He cracked open a beer and handed it to me. "No worries. I'll introduce you to someone else. How about the professor's daughter? She's definitely your type." I rolled my eyes and teased. "Why not introduce me to the principal's daughter and all the pretty top-performing girls in our school?" "Me too," Julian said, his eyes lighting up as he pulled me closer, patting his chest. "Sure, I'll introduce them all. Leave it to me." I snorted, not taking him seriously, thinking he was just joking. I washed up and went to bed. The next evening, I attended the translation club meeting. The seniors looked at me with pity. After a few comforting words, they began to praise Senior Carmen in front of me. I found out that Julian had gotten drunk again, and not only spilled the details about my heartbreak, but also turned my drunken joke into a list of dating criteria, trying to set me up with a girlfriend from the translation club. In the end, everyone thought Senior Carmen was a perfect match and began trying to matchmake us. Senior Carmen is the president of our translation club and the niece of our Spanish professor. She has excellent grades and is pretty, but her personality is too composed, always carrying a cool, distant aura, much like my cousin who constantly criticizes me. I only respect her, but there's no romantic interest. So I immediately refused. Don't joke around. My relationship with Senior Carmen is like siblings, not what you think, I said, signaling for her to agree. But she remained silent, her face blushing. After a few seconds of awkwardness, I began to panic. Could it be that? Seeing her silence, the group got even more excited. Even the president agrees. Why are you hesitating? Yeah, be a man, they cheered. I had a headache, not knowing how to get out of this, and shot a glare at the drunk Julian. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and the Spanish professor entered, smiling. I've been listening for a while. You guys are lively. The crowd, not fearing the trouble, added fuel to the fire. Professor, you came at the right time. Alexander is looking for a girlfriend, and we think the president is perfect for him. We're matchmaking them. The president is your niece, so if they get together, you'll be family. Ha ha, they joked. The professor, amused, said, They do make a good pair. I like Alexander the most, but you can't force feelings, especially since Alexander just had a heartbreak. Don't tease him. The professor had heard everything. How embarrassing. But the group was relentless, continuing their matchmaking efforts, determined to pair me with Senior Carmen. They were truly insistent, especially Julian, who, usually quick with his words, had no filter when drunk. He chimed in repeatedly, Professor, it's not heartbreak, it's that his crush has a boyfriend now. Then he spilled my whole crush story, how I used Spanish to flirt, and how I deceitfully called someone my girlfriend. A burst of laughter erupted. My heart raced, and my hands felt awkward at my sides. Isabella seemed just as surprised to see me, her expression a mix of curiosity, surprise, and a sudden frown. We stared at each other in silence for a long time. Julian broke the silence, introducing me to Isabella. This is Alexander, the guy Senior Carmen likes, my friend. Isabella's face darkened further. I wanted to greet her, but her stern look stopped me. I just stared at her, speechless. The others thought I was infatuated. Uh-oh, the president is in danger. Alexander's soul has been stolen by Isabella. He's more smitten than any of us. He seems beyond help. Hey, Alexander, wake up. Isabella has a boyfriend. Right, Isabella. Of course, I knew she had a boyfriend, and his name was Luis Garcia. Isabella, silent for a while, nodded. Yes, I have a boyfriend. Even though I knew it, hearing her confirm it hit me hard. A few seconds later, she walked through the crowd to stand in front of me, looked up, and stared at me for a long time. Her intense gaze made me uneasy. Finally, she spoke slowly. Saul, long time no see, boyfriend. What? The crowd erupted. I was dumbfounded, staring at her in disbelief. Everyone in the room was confused, looking between Isabella and me, eager for answers. I snapped out of it and explained, Actually, we were high school classmates. The crowd was shocked and even more confused. High school classmates? Then why did you act like strangers just now? I didn't know how to explain. I was rendered silent by Isabella's strong resentment. She, her pretty face full of frustration, said, Just classmates. I asked, What else? She smiled, her eyes narrowing. Are you sure? Don't you have anything to say to me? Thinking about her having a boyfriend made me sad, so I forced a fake smile. I wish you happiness. Isabella's face darkened further. Well, you're really good at pissing people off, Alexander. Weren't you the one shouting Isabella te amo? Weren't you the one saying we were novio and novia? Or should I say cónyuge? I finally realized it. She was the Spanish professor's daughter, of course. She understood Spanish. So she had understood all my nonsense back then. My toes curled with embarrassment. She continued pressing. I heard you're my mom's favorite student. Tell me, what does novio and novia mean? She was asking the obvious, but knowing I was at fault, I awkwardly replied, Boyfriend and girlfriend. Uh-huh, and ti amo? I love you, I said, almost defeated. Isabella seemed satisfied. Her lips curled into a smile and her tone softened. Yo te amo también, which means, I love you too. I was completely stunned, panicking, sweating, my mind buzzing. After a brief moment of clarity, I still didn't understand. She had a boyfriend. Why say such confusing things to me? I thought of the guy named Luis Garcia and asked, "But don't you have a boyfriend?" She was exasperated. Yes, and you are. But unlike you, people maintain long-distance relationships. And you played hide and seek, impossible to find. The facts were clear, but I was still struggling. But they said your boyfriend is called Luis Garcia. She rubbed her forehead, took out a bracelet, and pointed at the letters engraved, J.B.D. Delry. Spell it out yourself. Is it Luis Garcia or Alexander? Even I, slow as I was, knew it was Alexander. I was thrilled, embarrassed, and in disbelief. But if you understood, why didn't you say anything back then? I asked, my voice faltering. Isabella sighed helplessly. I wanted to surprise you, but it turned into a shock. It turned out that after I confessed, Isabella had ordered matching bracelets, planning to confirm our relationship on Monday. But I disappeared, and it almost drove her crazy. Later, someone saw the letters WG on her bracelet and assumed it was for Luis Garcia. She couldn't be bothered to explain, and so the rumor spread. The crowd pieced the story together. So Isabella was the secret crush Alexander flirted with back then? Yeah, and Alexander was even jealous of himself. Isabella even helped her cousin pursue her own boyfriend. Damn! We thought Alexander was just like us, comforting him. Now we feel so embarrassed. Julian was laughing so hard, he was clutching his stomach. Those poor beers you drank. They took on a burden that wasn't theirs. The professor and her friend were also laughing uncontrollably. Embarrassment was my companion tonight. I had nothing more to say. The professor took my hand looking very satisfied. Alexander, from now on, Isabella is your responsibility. Take good care of her, Julian said, his eyes lighting up as he pulled me closer, patting his chest. I blushed and stammered. It's no trouble. This made everyone burst out laughing once again. As the laughter faded, people's attention shifted back to Senior Carmen, especially Isabella, who gritted her teeth. Sister, what were you planning earlier? Isabella asked, clearly frustrated. Senior Carmen, brushing a lock of hair from her face, shrugged. I didn't say anything or have any plans. You must have misunderstood. The others quickly joined in. Yes, we didn't say anything either. We know nothing. They were so quick to change sides. Senior Carmen didn't seem bothered or embarrassed. In fact, she appeared intrigued, as if she were enjoying the drama. Every now and then, she'd glance our way, watching for any new developments. She probably didn't care for me that much either. She'd never been in a relationship, and it seemed like her classmates' teasing made her want to try out the idea of it. Someone in the group started teasing again, urging Isabella and me to kiss. I wanted to wave it off, but someone threw me a thumbs up. Even the professor had a hard time keeping a straight face. Alexander, you're lucky that girl probably didn't understand Spanish, or you'd have gotten yourself into some serious trouble, the professor joked. I just wanted to melt into the floor out of embarrassment, feeling utterly defeated. I gave up entirely. Luckily, she didn't understand. Or if we both liked each other, but missed the chance because of bad timing, I'd regret it forever, I said, defeated. The professor offered some comforting words. If it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be. You'll find someone better. After more jokes, the professor finally settled down and quieted everyone. She informed us that her friend's book needed translating and asked if we'd like to take on the project. It was an excellent opportunity to improve our skills and earn some money. Everyone jumped at the chance and agreed enthusiastically. Once the details were finalized, the professor left. As the group dispersed, a few people made more jokes about me and Senior Carmen. I was so over this crazy world, dealing with people with no boundaries. Eventually, I gave Julian a piece of my mind. He promised to make it up to me with a few hot pot meals and swore off drinking. Only then did I grudgingly forgive him. Things in the translation club started picking up. In our free time, some people still tried to pair me with Senior Carmen, betting on when we would officially announce our relationship. I couldn't believe it, and I tried to stop them, but it was futile. Senior Carmen didn't seem to acknowledge the rumors, so I took it as a sign that she didn't like me that way. I felt relieved and decided to stop caring about their chatter. Before long, we were halfway through translating the book when the professor's friend invited us on a team-building trip to discuss the book's localization in South America. But the weather had other plans, and it rained all weekend. So, we decided to have a dinner party at the professor's villa instead. Julian, eager to see the professor's daughter again, rushed ahead to the professor's house. A few seniors and I went out to buy the ingredients, so we arrived a bit later than the others. As soon as we entered the courtyard, we could hear laughter from a distance. Moving closer, we overheard someone asking Senior Carmen if she liked me. They were joking that she was too reserved. "Senior Carmen, do you like Alexander or not? Every time we see you, you're standing 3 meters away from him," one person teased. "Exactly. If you like him, just confess. A woman chasing a man is like a veil. If you miss the chance, you'll regret it." The professor and her friend were smiling, clearly enjoying the scene. The professor's friend even encouraged Senior Carmen to speak up. "It's okay if you fail. You can still be friends." Senior Carmen turned to the girl next to her and asked, "You have a boyfriend. Give me some advice." The girl thought for a moment. From the back, I couldn't see her face, but something about her gestures seemed familiar. Someone noticed us entering and quickly took the ingredients from us. Julian pulled me into the group and pointed at the girl next to Senior Carmen. "Look, this is the beautiful daughter of the professor I told you about. Isn't she amazing?" I turned to greet her, and the moment she turned around, my heart skipped a beat. It was Isabella. She was even more stunning than before, her face perfectly defined and her long, dark hair cascading over her shoulders. Every smile, every glance exuded an irresistible charm. But then I realized something. Isabella and I were already holding hands. Isabella pulled me upstairs, saying she had something for me and wanted to avoid the prying eyes of the group. She took a delicate velvet box from a cabinet and revealed a matching couple's bracelet. Looking at me with deep emotion in her eyes, she asked, "Alexander, will you be my boyfriend?" Unable to hide my smile, I put on the bracelet. "Then, can I kiss you?" I asked, my voice almost a whisper. She shyly nodded and closed her eyes, her lips parting ever so slightly. My heart raced, a fire burning in my chest. But then, I decided to tease her a bit. I took her hand and gave it a light peck. She opened her eyes, pouting, ready to leave. But before she could step away, I pulled her back. "Why are you mad? We haven't even started yet." We kissed for what felt like forever, and then she kissed me again. When she finally broke away, nearly out of breath, she said in a hoarse voice, "No more kissing. Let's go eat. We have plenty of time." At the dinner table, the others were clearly eager for answers. "When did you two start liking each other? Tell us who fell first?" Without hesitation, I answered, "I definitely fell first." I still remember that it was my birthday, but I couldn't get through to my parents by phone for days. After evening self-study, I sat alone in the hallway of the classroom. Isabella, who had been watching from above, came down and pointed to the small cartoon cake in my hand. "Can you share some with me? I'm a little hungry," she said, pretending to swallow. The cake was a gift from my cousin, so I gave it all to her. She broke it in half and handed me the other half. "Sharing is something even little kids know," she said with a grin. I laughed and told her it was my birthday. She wished me a happy birthday and asked what I wanted as a gift. I told her I didn't need anything, just felt a bit lonely since my parents were always away and rarely celebrated my birthday with me. A few days later, Isabella gave me a painting she had made. It was a family portrait of 3, with the boy in the middle surrounded by his parents, all smiling happily. That picture made me envious, and I stared at it for a long time. After that, Isabella often shared small cakes with me. She probably thought I liked them, but honestly, I didn't. Still, I couldn't refuse them. It was through those cakes that I got to spend a little time with her, but every time she finished sharing the cakes, she would leave. She always maintained a caring yet distant attitude. I couldn't understand why she behaved this way, but it made me develop feelings for her, and I ended up liking her for a long time. When I finished speaking, Isabella didn't seem surprised. As we walked side by side, she smiled and casually said that she had known for a long time that I liked her, but maybe she liked me even earlier. I first noticed you when you held a funeral for your cat by the back gate of the school. I saw you wrap its body in your scarf. Although you didn't cry, your serious expression made me think you must be a very gentle person. I always felt a connection to that cat. That lonely stray cat had been with me for a long time, or rather, it had been my companion through my loneliness. Holding it made me feel warm and cared for. It was gentle and always responded to me kindly. When it died, I felt as though I was burying a part of myself, saying goodbye to something that had been my family. That day, I thought a lot about life. If living is more a fact than an action, then all we can do is experience it. I experienced its departure and was relieved that it didn't have to experience my own death, as it peacefully stayed in my arms until the very end. I didn't expect Isabella to notice that too. Isabella said that after that moment she began paying closer attention to me, especially when she found out I celebrated my birthday alone in the hallway. Sometimes, she would casually pretend to pass by my class just to steal a glance at me. Now I understood why she always seemed to appear when I was feeling down, handing me a piece of broken cake. Little did I know, she had deep feelings for me. But you never really talked to me. You always left after breaking the cake, I said. That's because I overheard you on the phone saying you liked me, but you definitely wouldn't date early. What else could I do? I could only secretly watch you, she admitted. That explained everything. I always thought she was just playing some strange role. Once Isabella made our relationship public, some of her admirers still couldn't let go and confess to her. Her school was nearby, and I often went to watch the drama unfold. I wasn't there to catch a cheater, I was just observing. Every time Isabella saw me watching with a nonchalant expression, she would get irritated, thinking that I didn't care about her or that I wasn't jealous. I explained to her that it wasn't that I didn't care, but being with such a beautiful girlfriend required a strong heart. Otherwise, if I was anxious and insecure all the time, how could I manage? The last time I couldn't take it anymore. Seeing Isabella still puffed up with anger, I lifted her chin and kissed her right in front of the guy who had been confessing to her. Then, I turned to the boy and asked, "Do you want to keep watching?" They were furious, but they stormed off, calling me a show-off. Isabella scolded me harder than they did, blushing and hitting my chest. From that moment on, everything was quiet. One weekend, Isabella and I were alone watching a movie and things started to heat up. She was even more eager than I was. Just when we were about to cross a line, the professor came home early from a trip to a neighboring city. When the professor's face darkened, Isabella quickly confessed, "Mom, it was my idea." The professor snorted, "I knew it. How many times have I told you to value yourself? Didn't you listen?" Seeing her getting scolded so pitifully, I stepped in to take the blame. "Teacher, it's my fault." The professor's expression immediately softened. "I know what kind of child you are." She glanced at Isabella, sighed helplessly, and gave us a lecture on adult responsibilities. She even handed us a box of contraceptives, implicitly approving our future actions. I was so embarrassed that I could barely lift my head. Julian, feeling guilty toward Senior Carmen, followed her around every day to make amends. After all, he was the one who started all the teasing. I often saw them eating together, shopping together, and avoiding me. It was quite amusing. Even in the translation club, their desks were next to each other. Julian, with guilty eyes, explained, "Don't misunderstand. It's because Isabella warned Senior Carmen to stay away from Alexander, so we moved seats." Everyone understood and didn't call them out, but it was clear that Isabella had warned Senior Carmen to stay away from me. She was too scared to even accept a bottle of water from me. "That girl knows Sanda," Isabella muttered, a hint of helplessness in her voice. It was kind of pitiful. I told Isabella not to treat her cousin that way. After all, she hadn't done anything wrong. Every time Isabella would grit her teeth and say, "Just thinking about how she asked for my help to pursue you and how I even gave her advice makes me furious." I was curious. "What advice did you give her?" "To send you small cakes. Luckily, she never got the chance to do it." I laughed. "Not every guy likes small cakes. Besides, I only like the ones that are abstractly broken." Years later, on another sunny afternoon, Isabella and I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Don't misunderstand, we got married. The sunlight that once bathed our young love now cast shadows on the blooming flowers of our relationship. I, Alexander, could finally give Isabella a boda, which is Spanish for wedding. Still the same two people, this time holding hands openly. As the breeze blew, the two of us stayed close together, from curiosity to care, to falling in love, to romance, and finally, to marriage. It was all step by step. Facing the light, the next step was holding hands and growing old together. Isabella's side story. In the second year of high school, I originally wanted to transfer to my mom's place. But I decided against it. After all, this school wasn't so bad. Mostly I liked the cartoon small cakes, but then, well, cartoon small cakes. I don't think I ever want to eat them again in my life. Sigh, he left in such a hurry. There must have been an unspeakable reason for it. I couldn't help but ask his former friends. They said Alexander's first choice was S University. All right then, I'll aim for C University, right next to it. We're bound to meet again if we're so close, right? I guessed he would study Spanish at S University, given how good he was at it. At least that I love you, he said, sounded really nice. My mom happened to work at S University. As soon as school started, I asked her if there was a student named Alexander. She said there was. I was overjoyed and practiced long time no see over and over in my head. Hey, I found him. It's Alexander. It's my boda.